So welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces. So this is episode 61, and I'm really excited to welcome on Chris Toy, who's the CEO of MarketerHire. So if you're not familiar with MarketerHire, it's a leading marketplace for hiring freelance marketing professionals that thousands of top startups use for their marketing needs. So Chris, welcome to the group chat, and it's definitely great to have you join us here today. For today's chat, I'd love to break it down into two parts, with the first being learning more about MarketerHire as a marketplace itself and your journey of scaling it. Then the second part, I'd like to discuss marketing in general, since I know you've worked with hundreds of startups in one way or another. Before we jump into things though, maybe you can start off by sharing a little bit more on your background for those that don't know you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Very excited to talk through stuff. So I'm about 20 years into marketing and an entrepreneurial career. So I started in New York in the early 2000s. I was working at big agencies in New York. Nothing super exciting, but I was working in direct marketing, which were direct response marketing and CRM marketing, which was the precursor to digital marketing. All of the direct response principles, all the data-driven marketing principles became digital marketing, right? So that was great. I mean, and I started there because I wanted, the brand work is fun, but I was more interested in the data-driven psychology stuff. And so was working at agencies for a few years, big agencies, small agencies. Then had a little bit of a detour where I had started a website, a soccer website on the side, got really big. Ended up getting acquired from me by a sports media startup in London. So I moved there and worked with them, kind of leading that for a couple of years. Then came back to the States, started my own first agency in kind of late 2000s, when sort of like social media was starting to sort of really become popular and become something that companies were looking at. So we were doing a lot of early digital and social strategies for brands. In the early 2010s, like right around 2010, 2011, pivoted my agency out of working with brands and well, at least larger brands, and then working with tech startups. So it was one of the early marketing agencies for tech startups, certainly in New York, I think in general as well, but certainly in the New York area. Worked with seed stage all the way up to like Series C, Series D. And then eventually pivoted out into entrepreneurship again. And actually in those early days around 2012, 2013, was when I started working on, a number of concepts of how to turn marketing, or at least my marketing skill set and marketing thoughts into a tech product. And one of which was MarketerHire. So didn't end up doing that because I ended up moving to San Francisco and taking one concept and actually just launching a chat app, a pure chat app. It was kind of like we were a little bit before, a few months before Slack launched. So we were doing well, and then Slack launched, and it was a lot harder to do well after that. But moved out here, raised some venture to build that for a couple of years. Eventually wound that down when we didn't end up being the big winner. And then was obsessed with what is now MarketerHire, because 7 years later from when I first had the idea, a lot of things around future of work and marketplaces and tech and on demand and all these other trends were obviously much more mature. And I really felt like it was a great time to do it. So ended up teaming up with my friend Raja and then a couple of new co-founders, and launched it. Yeah, launched it in early 2019.
That's quite the the background. You had some really incredible experience. So what was like that the founding story then for MarketerHire, and what were maybe some of the first steps that you took to start it as a marketplace?
Yeah, I'd always, throughout my career, always kind of been interested in paying attention to what was changing in marketing, and then coming up with a business to apply it to an interesting segment that I thought was interesting in related to where marketing was going. And so, with MarketerHire, it's kind of like the, coup de grace for me is kind of going at marketing as a concept, in itself. How do you make marketing accessible? And I think that's something for marketplaces that is interesting about launching a marketplace now versus 10, 15 years ago, and kind of earlier, or even 20 years ago, kind of the earlier days when Amazon launches. Then you get companies like Uber and Instacart, I consider those to be marketplaces. I consider those to be managed marketplaces. Not everyone does, but kind of I do as I route everything through a marketplace lens. And so I think you have to kind of think about like what kind of marketplace are you really? We're a marketplace with an on-demand buying experience. You don't come to MarketerHire and just browse a million profiles. Where we believe we will match you to exactly who you want, as much as we have an open supply and demand mechanism to our market, like any marketplace would. We're a managed marketplace, but we have an on-demand curated managed delivery system. So you don't browse. You come to us 48 hours later. Our tech, our data has made an exact match for you, and we believe that that marketer is exactly the marketer you want, and they can start right away because obviously we know that. And we're trying to get to that magical element of doing the hardest thing, which is any size company comes to us and says, "I need a marketer," and we say, "Great! In 48 hours, we're going to match you to exactly the right marketer. You can start right away, and you're going to hire that person." And that's what we've been able, largely been able to do for the last 2 years, which is why we're, have been growing so quickly and being so successful is being able to deliver on that. And at each stage along the way, I think being very clear of product delivery. I think a lot of marketplaces kind of like will build the tech of like supply can sign up and demand can sign up, but then like hopefully it all works out like that. Even if you say it out loud, that sounds almost impossible. Right. Whereas for us, we were focused on delivering the end product to the buying customer, the hirer in this case. And all our technology evolved, obviously became much more complex as we go along. But from beginning to end, we were always structuring our data and our product to deliver the thing. Right. 48 hours, here's the exact marketer. That happened day one. That happens now. Everything in the background, our tech is completely different. But to the end user, same thing, right? Like, what was the difference? Like, does it matter to me how Uber is getting me a car now versus 8 years ago? It doesn't matter to me at all, but they're still getting me a car. Like, that's cool. So I think being focused on actually delivering the product was really key to us early on. And we made all of our decisions, kind of based on that.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's so much for us to jump into with that. I think it might be helpful though, just for some context for everyone, if you could maybe just start though by giving us a kind of a general high level kind of overview of what MarketerHire is as a marketplace, and maybe who the typical kind of startups are that come to you as clients and their needs.
Yeah. So it's a managed marketplace. So I think there's not necessarily sorry, messages coming around. I think you might be hearing it. There's not sort of, I think, an agreed final definition of what exactly managed means for a managed marketplace, but just generally means you're more involved in maybe the pricing, maybe certainly the talent, the demand and supply sort of curation and how you filter those things. So it's not just open. So we're a managed marketplace, and so. We have the supply side. We have thousands of marketers applying. We have around a 3 to 4% acceptance rate after they whoever gets through our vetting, our sort of vetting product, make it onto the platform that makes up our supply base. And we're constantly editing that. Early on too, but at our size, we're constantly making tweaks. So we might make a tweak to our vetting and our 48 attributes that make up an email marketer. We might tweak that, and suddenly we have 200 more marketers or 200 less marketers from the addressable market, because we're tweaking that based on our data and based on some of our own opinions of what's changing out there in the world. So we're always having to tune it, right? It's not as simple as an Uber where they just need to get you a car and a driver who's like a safe driver or doesn't have a criminal record. We're constantly having to update. You imagine, what we have to kind of work on to update to deal with, iOS 14 privacy, to deal with, or TikTok or a Clubhouse launches. So we're always having to tweak, right? And that changes our sort of addressable supply, or available supply. And then demand side is very open, so we actually do a lot of qualification at the sales level on the demand side too. And then that allows us to make, effective matches in the middle. So, current customer base, is all sorts. We have thousands of customers, and everywhere from Netflix, HP, Allbirds, Costco, Thrive Market, many Fortune 500, many unicorns, and then of course, like most marketplaces, or these B2B products, a long tail like mid-market SMB, early stage startups, right? So a lot of those, but all the way up to biggest companies in the world, biggest startups in the world, and everything in between, and they all get the same product experience. So we close HP and Netflix with the same product experience that a local business, local bookstore signs up, same product to them. Which again, from day one, we were like, the hypothesis was, I think that this will work for everybody. And we've been very happy when we find that that's proven true, because that really makes us the most disruptive force. If a C-level person from a Fortune 500 company signs up, a CMO at a Fortune 500 is signing up, and a local bookstore signing up, and they're both hiring, within a few days, can't really beat that. So while we're not necessarily true SaaS, our business kind of moves a lot like SaaS. It looks a lot like SaaS.
Yeah, that's quite incredible to hear, and I know I've been following along, and it seems like the growth has been taken off. So if we kind of go back though to the earliest kind of days, and then maybe throughout some kind of key points through scaling, what were some maybe challenges with kind of managing the liquidity of supply and demand?
Yeah, I think you kind of get through. It's kind of what I was saying before. Marketplaces are known as being one of the more, if not the most difficult, startup you can launch, because you have to deal with both sides. And then you're like, oh, let's be customer focused. Well, which side is really your customer, right? Well, the one that's paying. Like, well, depending on where you're taking money from, like sometimes both sides are paying, right? So it kind of gets a little bit loose in the middle. And so I think a challenge is you have to have clarity. You just can't, if you're building like a Tinder dating app, you can kind of, it's a little more of a simplistic thought process on how to grow it. For a marketplace, it's, a ton of operational excellence you have to have. It's a ton of financial excellence you have to have. The lines between product and technology and everything, and sales and marketing, and all gets pretty blurry, especially for a B2B marketplace. So you really have to have clarity, early on like what you're trying to build, what ultimately is important, that going into delivering a product, and then also beginning to have good data and tech around like where the lines of the business are. So our general goal is to deliver your match in 48 hours. Sometimes that's more than that, right? Sometimes it's less than that. Like, does that really matter, or is that just a marketing thing that we say? If your Uber takes 10 minutes, you're probably okay with it. If your Uber says 25 minutes, you're probably like canceling and walking or something, right? So it's all lines. You kind of pretty quickly find it's all spectrum, and that makes it challenging, but also really exciting, because if you can crack it and figure out where your bounds are, you can do really well. Again, it's there's just a lot more to it than your average product. So challenges is kind of dealing with that. It's dealing with this understanding that once you get past a certain point of maturity, it's all kind of gray, right? Like it's rarely so easy as, again, Uber, right? Again, just to make a example that we've all kind of used to make it a little bit easier. Car comes in 2 minutes, cool. Car comes in 5 minutes, like bad? Like, I don't know, right? Depends on what Uber's data tells them, right? So you kind of got, a lot of that comes up. And so that's why you have to have clarity around what is really the most important thing. You probably don't actually have two customers on both sides of it, but you can't, it doesn't mean that one of them gets a really bad experience. There's just a lot of that kind of stuff. It's well, it depends, well, it depends. And so, for me, certainly as CEO and our co-founders and our leadership team now, spending a lot of time thinking about and debating priorities and importance, and like where can we make things black or white, right? For a market, for a business, a startup, a marketplace, which is just, got the most gray you could probably have with a business.
So one of the things I did want to bring up and talk about a little bit is your concierge model. So I would love to learn a little bit more about, what that process is like with the concierge that you use for startups to help them identify their needs. And then, beyond that, as far as, then matching them with some of the freelancers.
Yeah, yeah. It's a concierge. We sort of have a concierge front end. It's our sales team. In another way. A lot of B2B tech companies now will have they'll call it solutions architect, right? Where if you go and you buy AWS, they'll give you a solutions architect. That's someone who works really closely and is often, an engineer or XPM who works really closely with these enterprise clients to best determine how to use this technology for their business, right? If you look at pure tech, they get really into the weeds with you. It's almost like they're part of your team. That's what we call growth managers. That's what our team does. There's a concept called marketing operations, which is not yet really buzzy within startups. Again, it's one of those terms that can mean a lot of different things, but we're really kind of fleshing that out as an important concept for us, which is, if you sign up on MarketerHire, you will get assigned a growth manager. That growth manager is probably 100 times better at knowing how to hire your marketing team than you will ever know, and anyone you knows, because they're backed by our data, they're backed by our tech. We know what people are hiring, why, we know what successful isn't. We're rolling out pieces of machine learning and NLP now as well, to who's a good communicator, what kind of communicator does that person match to. So we're going to be better at that than our customers will ever be. We already are. And so that's a pretty insane value to be able to talk to one of our growth managers for free and get your question answered. That's one of the most common things I get asked about, right? By various peers and people. And people get sent to me all the time. Hey, Chris, how do I hire a marketer? How do I hire this? Do I need 5 marketers? How do I set a budget? All those questions, which we consider to be marketing operations. How do I build a team that is stage appropriate for my company? Any size. It could be a Fortune 500 company asking us about how does TikTok work, which they did. We can answer all of it. And so to get that for free is kind of an underrated part of our product, probably. I consider it to be one of our most valuable pieces, is that you get this thing. What price would you put on being right? Right? We've all made mistakes in all our businesses. Hiring certainly is very difficult. What price do you put on being right? Right? So our growth managers are there to help you get peace of mind that you have made the right decision with your hiring strategy. And then our product gives you the actual person. That's pretty incredible, right? And our customers are realizing that. Again, that's why we're growing as fast as we are. But I think it'll be, it'll increasingly be something that the rest of the world realizes as we all build our marketplaces. Is we're entering sort of a phase 2. I don't know if you want to call it that, a phase 2 or a new phase at least of marketplaces, right? Versus, hey, go browse and figure it out. We're entering a phase of whoa, I can actually get exactly what I need when I need it, right? And that's what we will kind of obsessed with doing from day one. If I can get you, so I used to say the right amount of the right marketer right now is sort of the 3 parts, and that's what we really do. So yeah, the concierge model is to have someone really be a marketing operations expert. And just kind of do it for you, just take your inputs and then tell you what you should do, which I think is ultimately what everyone wants if they trust the person telling them, and that's why I kind of use concierge thing. If there's a really good concierge and I'm traveling and I'm like, man, I'm really tired, I just got in, where's a local place I can get some whatever? He's, oh, there's a place around the corner, the locals go there, it's still open, it's great, make sure you get this. I'm like, man, that's amazing, thank you. I don't want to take 4 hours looking at places on my phone. That kind of experience is what we want.
That's great. I can only imagine, how much inbound you kind of get to the, to the growth managers. So you'll probably get quite a few in the community here after this. So yeah. So you did kind of mention some of the tech. So the last time you and I spoke, I believe we were talking about no code and marketplaces, and there was a ton there. So could you maybe share a little bit more about kind of the product for MarketerHire and how that has kind of evolved?
Yeah. I mean, early on, it was me, day zero is me sitting there with a spreadsheet, right? So I think you kind of be realistic around. I said, but me and the spreadsheet still will stage appropriate, right? I was still matching in. I was still getting people that marketers in 48 hours. It was it was a list of like my friends and contacts, but we was still getting you in 48 hours. Like you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference, right? Between what you got as a customer then and now. So I think that's always been an important part of our focus. And then now we've added, yeah, I mean, we're building a lot of custom tech. You have to wait until you accrue enough data to really be able to make plays into machine learning and like algorithm. Like yeah, like even an algorithm is just a decision made according to like a logic tree, right? So like I have one in my head that I use for a very long time. So 2 years on, a lot of that's matured now. So we're no longer low code. Where yeah, like what is low code, right? Is using Salesforce low code? Like not really, right? That's just using it. Is using AWS mean you're low code? Not really, right? So the concept is really, I think, it just all depends on, is there an available tool that is way better than what you could ever build? In which case, why build it, right? And then zeroing in on the parts that we think are highest leverage for us to build and start building those pieces first. So a big part of that for us is just anything that facilitates a faster, more accurate match. So we work a lot on data. Our algorithm, we have big enough data sets now where we're applying machine learning and all the very very fun buzzwords. It's actually it is actually really fun to work on that stuff. So the next few years for us, the goal is to get it down to where we're getting a marketer that you can't believe in 2 minutes. Like that's the goal. Do we ever get there? There's some realities around people's availability. It's a little trickier, but we're on that path now, right? Hit a button, get the exact talent you need. We're the closest out of, not even just in marketing, out of a lot of companies. We're the one of the closest, if not the closest, to doing that at scale. I think it's an inevitability that this is where talent is going, and so we want to be investing in a technology that's going to drive it where hit a button, perfect talent begins work. Obviously, remote working world helps out a lot, right? Because if it has to be someone local who shows up to your office, it's a little trickier to hit a button and that actually happens. But for work like this, and I think COVID obviously sucks, but it did accelerate future of work and remote work concepts probably 10, 15 years, which is nice.
Yes. So on that note too, yeah, I was actually going to ask about how maybe COVID has accelerated your growth kind of with MarketerHire. So could you maybe share a little bit more about that and your recent growth, and maybe a little bit more about the sense of scale you're at today?
Yeah. I probably can't share too much. I'll think about how best to anonymize that a little bit. But we're growing very quickly, very very quickly. There was a good issue. I don't know if you guys read Packy McCormick's Not Boring newsletter, which is very good. If you don't, you should. But he just announced he's one of our investors, and he just announced his fund. And he had like a graph of like fastest growing to certain revenue points for like recent B2B startups. We would be one of the fastest. I'll put it that way on that graph. Period. Like single digit, kind of one hand fastest on that graph. So over to get to through 2.5 years. So we'd be one of the fastest growing on that graph to 2.5 years, which is really exciting. Which is really exciting. So.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely that's incredible to hear. So I'll have to check out that post. I saw we got a few nods. I know Levi when you mentioned Packy's newsletter, so I'm sure others here have seen it. So I feel like even I could go on talking about MarketerHire for quite some time as a marketplace, but I wanted to jump into maybe more general your experience working with some so many different marketplaces and startups on marketing. So could you maybe kind of walk us through and just generally speaking, some successful traits of startups that you worked with in the earlier stages when it comes to marketing?
Yeah, for sure. I keep marketing pretty simple. I'm very glad to have started when I did. I started in like 2003, right? So internet's really just getting commercialized. I'm born and raised a child of the internet, going to direct response marketing. I'm there through that whole transition, watching direct response marketing become digital marketing. And so, kind of being there for that whole journey and having all these ad platforms launch, I'm like the old guy in the room, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, like you can do lookalike audiences. I was doing those by hand in 2004, right? It took me like weeks, right? You know what I mean? You could buy those all the time. So like nothing's really new. Digital just sort of like accelerated it all, right? We used to wait 18 months for a B2B client to find out if a test worked, right? 18 months. Because you're like, well, we'll see whether or not they renew their lease on whatever, like in 2 years, right? Like that's weird. But so it's just a lot faster now. It's the same principles. And so, keep it kind of pretty simple. When I talk to startups, I usually open with like a pretty simple question, right? I'll say, look, who is this for, and why is it a no-brainer, right? And probably like 9 times out of 10, they don't have a great answer, or they don't have an answer, or not confident in the answer to one of or both of those questions. And that just starts the whole conversation, right? Because at that point, it's much easier. Well, if it's not a no-brainer, or you don't know why it's a no-brainer, I probably don't need you to start on marketing yet, right? Because marketing is spending money in pursuit of efficiently putting your product in front of people who want to buy it, right? It's really simple. Advertising, right, is buying and distributing ads in service of making people aware of your product. The direct response component is a detail, right? You're just trying to put something in front of people in a way where they're like, oh yeah, I need that. Or, oh yeah, I might try that, right? And you do it enough times so where they actually remember to bother trying it. Oh, I saw it on TV, then I forgot. Saw an ad on my phone, then I forgot. Saw a blog post, then I forgot. Just got to do it enough times so they remember, or they're actually sitting somewhere. They're not in a meeting. They can actually take an action. It's all very, very, very simple. But a lot of startups, because it's so rare to have marketing, like when I started my last tech company in like 2013, I wrote a blog post, about the lack of marketing co-founders, right? I mean, how often do you hear about a marketing co-founder? It's pretty rare. So when they don't have marketing in their DNA early, often they don't frankly respect marketing. They kind of feel like they don't need it, or they can learn it because Facebook ads seem really easy or something. That leads to them, you'll often see a startup conflate marketing with product, right? They'll look to marketing to answer things that they should have answered with product. Oh, hey, I'm not quite sure who it's from. I'm going to spend $500 on Facebook ads, testing different demos and see who wants it. That doesn't make sense at all. The math doesn't make sense. The strategy doesn't make sense. It's not going to work. And a lot of startups have come to me off the back of spending a lot of money in some cases, and really having nothing to show for it, because again, they haven't done the root work. Say, look, you just need to like talk to like 5 or 6 of your target customers to understand whether or not your thing is a no-brainer for them. Like that's it, right? Now you'll dilute it if you don't know how to. You can still be bad at that, and you can still be good at that, right? You can choose the wrong 6 customers. You can ask the wrong questions. You can phrase it incorrectly. You can dilute that 6 group. But if you really know who it's for, like down to some good details, like on a professional level, which again, you can be bad at, and you really know how to position, the product pitch, you just need to ask a few people to know if it's true. And then once you know that, then just go blast that same thing out with a bunch of ads and you'll be fine. I mean, seriously, right? And then the rest of it is just, sort of math. You're not owed a profitable business. You're not owed a low CAC. You're not owed anything. But most startups are struggling with that initial piece, which is, do I even know who it's for? And do I know why it's a no-brainer for them? Right? Because none of us are building a startup you can build a bootstrap business and not be a no-brainer, right? You can build like a small lifestyle business and you're just one of a bunch. You don't really care, like as long as some people use it sometimes, that's totally fine. But if you're trying to be a high growth startup, then you are trying to introduce something which is a no-brainer for a large part of some kind of, for a large segment. It is a no-brainer, new thing. And they're like, whoa, this didn't exist before. Sounds amazing. I'm going to do it. That's what we're all trying to do. So if you don't really have that yet, that's probably what I would work on. Again, and that's not really marketing. That's really product. But that's what a lot of startups kind of like, well, I invented it. So if I can find the right growth hacker, we'll be fine. Like, not true at all, right? So yeah, I would say that. I mean, it's not really like a marketing answer, but that's because most of the time for early stage companies, which I think is on this conversation, the problem I find is that early interaction between product and marketing. They think they're ready from a product standpoint, and all they need is marketing, and that's actually pretty rarely true.
We're getting
they're going to start spending on marketing to answer the product thing, which is also a bad idea.
Yeah, you're getting quite a few nods here, and when you were talking through that. So yeah, that's super helpful. So maybe for early stage startups and marketplaces in particular here within the community, when they can't answer that question, how do you kind of advise them to think through maybe bringing it internal and in-house versus being ready for using a platform like yours, such as MarketerHire?
Yeah, so it's probably going to sound like I'm going to recommend my own product, but we launched this company, launched this product, believing that it will be one of the and it is. I mean, it frankly is one of the leaders of the future of work. If you look at the other talent marketplaces that are of a similar size to us, or there's a couple who are there's a couple who are bigger in other categories. We really have the most wide-ranging customer base, right? If you look at their customer base, you're like, okay, this is a very specific kind of customer at a very specific point in time. Whereas we really don't have that. Like I said, we'll get just the complete gamut. And so, and there's a number of reasons for that, but we get the complete gamut, which is awesome. And so I think, if you're thinking about that problem and you're kind of like looking at your marketing, one of the things that we really think, especially for us, again, I'll put it in terms of a startup, but the thesis is that this applies to every company if we just simply prove that our solution works. Like, why wouldn't you want, like, if you said, hey, you can wait 3 to 4 months, maybe hire the right person, maybe not, and then maybe you have to go hire them again if they don't work out, or you're like side-eyeing them for 3 to 4 months. It takes a long time. It takes a long time to hire people versus I could have you someone in 48 hours who is pre-vetted, long track record of success with us, and they're going to be just fine, and they can start Monday. Like, if you're a startup, and I think most businesses, and you think that, oh, the key thing is to move fast, the key thing is speed, the key thing is agility, like all these things that startups say, then you should apply that to your hiring too, right? And you shouldn't be like, no, I have to take forever to find the rock star that's going to work for my company for the next 12 years. That's not speed. That's not agility. That's waterfall. That's the opposite, right? And so with us being on-demand solution, rematching for us is a feature, right? It's not just that we get you this one marketer. You can build a team. You can build an 8-person team for 3 weeks, then bring it back down again. You can change the mix. You can experiment over here. You can wonder about TikTok and get someone in to experiment for 2 weeks. You can bring in 2 different CMOs every quarter to get different ideas. Like, being able to really just on demand completely shift and mix and match, bring in CMO, bring execution, bring ICs, diversify, change strategy. Like, why wouldn't you want that? I mean, there isn't a company in the world that doesn't want it. The only question is, well, how do I do it, right? And do I have good options that allow me to do that? And so we're building the option that allows you to do that. And that's why it's been really successful. So the companies who use us, they begin to continue, and they eventually get to this point, and it can be a hard point to get to because it's just so different. We're like, whoa, so I could just build my whole team with this. And it's not really about having this rock star who you take forever to recruit and give a ton of equity to and hope that he stay with you forever and hope that's the right person. It's not that. It's just getting good people to do the work that you need and things, you might not need them anymore in 3 weeks, and then 2 weeks after that you might need someone else, and we'll be there for you to hit that button every single time. And like that gives you a freedom now to build, to be fully agile, fully flexible, maintaining the highest level of true expertise. Because again, we've all hired people where we're like, well, maybe I'll just make that person do the other job too, because it's so hard to find people. Like, that's not good. Now you've got someone doing something at your company that's like a 4 out of 10 at it, right? So true expertise in every role, true flexibility, true agility, maximum speed, maximum up and down, minimum overhead. Like, show me a person who does not want that for their business. The only reason why they haven't done it to date is there has not been a solution that allows you to do that, meaningfully, right, at scale for a company, right? Which is what talent marketplaces like us are doing. So it really is going to be a brand new behavior, I think. And so yeah, for any company, there are still reasons why you might want an agency. There are still reasons why you might want to hire someone in-house, right? Like, there's even like taxation differences, right? There's always going to be, there's not going away, but we believe that we are and are going to be a permanent, third option, right? Some kind of agency, in-house, MarketerHire, right? And when you have the other two, you can still be using us. All three can be used together, as agency and in-house have been used together for a long time. We're going to be like the water, around the rocks, right? Like, we're always going to be there. And that's what we've seen the usage be so far. So, that's kind of the vision, right? We want to make marketing accessible. If we can do it, then we're going to be right there as just, a common option for every business in the world. We already think we're on that track, and just need to kind of keep delivering the product.
And now I know why you've scaled so quickly. So it's incredible.
Yeah, it is genuinely really hard to build a marketplace. It's a lot. You need a lot of really good people doing a lot of different things really well. Yeah, it's a lot, but it's good.
Awesome. So we got some questions coming in here. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into the group questions, if that sounds good to you.
Yeah. Sure.
Hey, Rich, do you want to jump on?
Yeah. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Hey.
Founder of a fintech that's just started on an accelerator. For the first time ever, we've got a bit of cash to spend on marketing. I've actually been speaking to someone from MarketerHire to try and decide who we hire first. With a budget of like 30 to 40K, what would you advise that we hire first? With B2B, we've never hired any marketer before, so would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And I'm happy, like, if anyone like wants to go deeper on it, you can like ask Matt for my email. I'm always happy to talk shop, but I'll kind of try and give you a relatively quick answer for other questions too. But I think there's like a couple of pieces that go into it. I think you need to also decide if you are going to be a VC of you've raised your funding. If you're going to be a VC backed startup, you really have to kind of keep the fundraising clock in mind, right? And so it's like, what do you, with marketing, like, next set of questions I ask is, what are your goals, right? So like, what do you need to achieve by when, and what resources do you have to do that, right? Really simple. So first thing, why is it a no-brainer, blah, blah, blah. Then once we get into spending money, it's what is the goal, but by when, and what do you have? So it sounds like what you have, right? 30, 40K. What is the goal and by when? Like, again, if you don't want to answer it, because maybe it's like, I don't know, confidential.
Getting early signups to our waitlist over the next 2 to 3 months to prove to investors that we can raise, a seed round, basically.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. So you got to get to the next investor story. So get signups for a waitlist. That's good. How many signups? Do you know?
1,000 plus would be great.
1,000. So hey, if we get 1,000 plus signups in the next 2 to 3 months, we think we can raise a seed round. Like, that's a great brief to be able to give a marketer, right? And the marketer really wants that brief because it's very, they know what they're trying to achieve and with what, versus, again, a lot of things that marketers will get is often this sort of like qualified thing, which is very odd. Like, what's your budget? Well, if you get me a 10-to-1 ROI, my budget's infinite. Like, well, like, no shit, right? Like, I don't that's not really helpful, right? We don't understand, like, really what are you willing to like spend and invest into marketing. So, in like 2 to 3 months, you're probably, if you have like, again, I mean, go back to the first one. If you have a no-brainer, I think that there's a lot of articles being covered about Robinhood's early days. I don't know if you guys were around for Robinhood's early days, but they had a few 100,000, maybe even 1 million plus wait list, like just off of the concept, like not even a product. I don't think they were just like, someone's building an app for like no fee stock, and then everyone just signed up. I remember having friends who were like, go sign up for it. Like the name was great, right? Robinhood. So you're like, yeah, like fuck them, we'll sign up. Like let's go do it. So like a waitlist thing is a real, there's real gamesmanship there. Again, go back to the first thing I said. If you know who this is for and why it's a no-brainer for them, then you should sit down and be like, cool, like, well, I know who it's for. Where do they live? Right? Like, can I get to them through advertising? Maybe. I don't know who it is. If I can't, then are there communities where I can get to them? Is it like a gateway thing where I'm going into like dev communities, like Stripe? Like maybe. Is it for founders? So go to founder communities, maybe Product Hunt, right? Like all these. So like, I would start with that. Who's it for? And why is it a no-brainer? And then just kind of trying to figure out what is the most cost-effective way and fast way, because 2-3 months is not a lot of time to go out and put your thing in front of them. And then early on, you'll find out if it's a no-brainer. I mean, again, maybe you do know already, but you'll find out at least if there's like channel fit, right? It's like product market fit. There's also like product market channel fit. Like not every channel delivers the product market fit in the same way. So you just want to kind of work through those steps. But yeah, I think that's a reasonable goal. I might even look at, anytime someone brings up a wait list to me, I kind of get interested in getting after people who have experience on Kickstarter. So I don't know how much you know about crowdfunding, but there's a very heavy generate a wait list component. Like you start like 6 to 9 months before your Kickstarter, because you want to build this huge wait list and then give them content, make them excited, share with a friend. So by the time your Kickstarter goes live, you have 100,000 people, 200,000 people who have all been like warmed up, like waiting for launch day. So I might go and try and find maybe a growth marketer who has crowdfunding experience if your goal is a wait list.
Got it. Yeah, but I'll follow up by email afterwards. I would love to.
Yeah, for sure. Cheers. And that community stuff too. Like, try and find for B2B. Try and find what communities does your target demo like even the Slack groups are good. There's early days is the easiest time, frankly, because the numbers are not that big. So just go plug yourself into different things.
Awesome, thank you.
That's super helpful. Hey, John, do you want to jump on?
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Has been super helpful. Great to have you here. Thank you. So I had a question similar to Richard's, but I'll switch it up because that was really helpful. So you alluded to hiring, really great people in the early days of your marketplace to make things work. Who were some of like your first key hires when you were getting this off the ground that kind of helped this thing get going so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of ways to do it. You kind of like, if I go back to like really day zero, right? Day zero is me doing every call, right? I'm interviewing every market, I'm vetting every marketer, I'm talking to every client, I'm making the match, right? And so depending on how you start, because you might have started, like, I'm not a software engineer, right? So I don't start with the tech. I start with, the product still, right? But, in a different way. And then, so however you start, you then just kind of need to make the business and product decision of like, which pieces do you want to begin to like abstract out and, find scalability for or do better, right? So for me, I'm like, well, I don't want to do, I did every vetting call for a long time. I mean, like quite a long time, because I actually found it to be really helpful. And I also thought that I would be the best recruiter. Like I'm the CEO, I'm the marketer of the co-founding group. So like I can talk the talk, I can do the vetting. It's probably gonna make you excited. And it really did. I think it was very effective to have me doing, I'm a marketer. I can talk to them about it. I'm not like a tech guy that started this idea for marketers. I'm trying to convince them to join a platform. I think it's very helpful to have me do it. And I was a marketer. So I did it for a very long time. I think our first hire, I believe, was a salesperson, because that was the part where I was like, I think I want to abstract that out. I'm okay if I have to be schmoozing and like recruiting the talent side myself. I kind of want to hold our feet to the fire on being able to pitch this cold. Like, I don't want to be like, well, as long as Chris is on the phone, who's got 20 years in the agency world, like schmoozing the hell out of customers, we can close. I didn't really want that to be a crutch for us. So we hired a salesperson early on because we wanted to prove that we could train someone to close at an effective rate. But I was okay with me doing the talent side because, again, this is where you got to think about very meaningfully about like your marketplace and what do the two different sides of it, if it's just two, even some have more, right? If there's just two sides to it, like really what is the interaction? Like how big is one versus the other? Because it's gonna be a while before you're like crushing data. Now we're using data for like utilization and liquidity and those other stuff like that. But like first going, there's no sample size, right? So it's got to all be intuition. You've got to like understand your own strengths, understand what's high leverage for you to be doing, and what's high leverage for someone else to be doing. And again, I think we didn't go out there and hire a VP sales, right? So it was a experienced B2B SaaS sales person, sales exec. Like wasn't some fancy title or anything, just really good. He's still the company today, and doing great. So brought him in to then also add some sales experience because we wanted that challenge of saying, okay, like how do we sell this cold? Still through a person, right? We didn't immediately jump into like self-serve or something because making these sort of careful steps, you don't want to accidentally abstract too much a core piece. And then suddenly, like all bets are off. Well, everything else sucks now. Maybe it's because we, swapped out Chris for, some terrible landing page, right? Like, there's no right way. I like to take careful baby steps, especially when it's working. When it's working, you're like, I don't want to like rock it too much, And even now, it's still a conversation we have. There's different things that we do in pursuit of growth, and there's different things that we do in pursuit of scalability, right? And we introduce concepts of like uptime. Like what's an uptime thing? What's an uptime investment? We could hire 5 people for the talent success team because we think we need better uptime of a certain kind of customer experience. It's not necessarily a growth thing, but a services growth. So there's like, this is where marketplaces again are that's why they're hard, because you don't get to run away from any of this stuff, right? When you have just like hey, I have Tinder, like it just kind of like sits there and like you don't really have to care about all this other stuff at a high level because it's all kind of baked into this on rails experience. The marketplace experience gets a little more, it's much more complex. Whether it's managed, whether it's on demand or self-serve or whatever else, it's much more complex. So we started with who's on our founding team, what are we good at, what do we want to be doing, what makes sense for us to abstract out now and replace, what makes sense for us to continue to own, and that's a conversation we have and a set of thinking that I have every day over the last 2 years. It's all we think about is like, which pieces here do we want to make what changes to? And you have to look at it individually and in aggregate, which obviously gets harder and harder the bigger you get. And then you add in like, management layers who you then kind of like all make sure you're on the same page of how things run. So very like building blocky and really approaching building the organization. We have our tech, but the organization also has to run like it's tech in order to best give you correct signals on what the tech is doing, right? So you kind of like try and do all this stuff together, which again is very fun and but extremely challenging.
Thank you, super helpful.
Hey, Chris, on that note too, what's the team size like today and kind of the org structure?
I don't know exactly how many we have. I think we're hiring a lot. I think we're a little north of 50 now. I don't know the exact number, but we're pretty robust. I mean, we at this point we have a pretty full suite of departments: sales, marketing, advertising, marketplace, which includes talent, and then technology, which includes product engineering and data science. And then there's like HR and things like that. So we're really full normal company at this point, right? The lines between we're obviously still a startup, but we have all the core functions filled with for the most part dedicated leadership. There's still some more little departments that we're adding here and there, like we're hiring for a creative director now, so yeah. We're definitely, I've been at big companies and worked at big companies plenty. We're definitely 1 foot in, 1 foot out between we're definitely not like a big weight heavy company, but we have to begin adding these mechanisms, or else it's going to get weird. And again, even just depending on how you want to build a company, like I'm like somewhere in between, right? I spent a lot of time in startups and tech, but I've also been at very high functioning large companies. So I'm not a CEO who's like, oh, like death to big companies, like the startup way's the best. Like I don't really like move fast and break things. I think it's a very dangerous, like most things, right? It's a perfectly reasonable saying, but there's a lot of caveats to that are not included with the saying. And so in the wrong hands, it's a terrible idea, because for a lot of startups, they think it means they don't have to think it through. Like speed by itself, like not really. Like in most things, in most industries, most work, like any job, it's pretty rare that's like, don't even think about it, just do it and you'll be better off. Like, and that leads to a lot of really bad stuff, actually. So I think the people who can do that are the ones who actually just naturally have like crushed all the risks and variables in their mind in like 5 seconds and then like make a decision, but you don't talk about that part. So, we like to kind of pair velocity over a period of time. So for me, I look at, originally it was weekly, right? Early on. Now it's more like monthly and a little bit quarterly too. Like, I don't really care so much how fast we are this week. I care about how fast we moved over like a quarter, right? So like, I'm okay if there's some tests fail. I'm okay if we take another week to think something through, as long as thinking it through makes us realize something that gets us velocity over time, right? I'd rather have pace over a quarter and a year, not pace over a week. And I do think those are very different things to manage to. And you have to like understand yourself as a manager too. So it can be tricky.
That's all really great. So I think we're going to try to get in one more question. We're almost out of time. But hey, let's see, Tomas, did you want to jump on quick?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mike. Chris, yeah, really appreciate this conversation. Super, super helpful, and really exciting to hear about your company, where you're at. Congrats, on that growth.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm managing building a company called Simple Surf. We're effectively a marketplace for surf lockers, creating a like Airbnb for surfboards experience. And the challenge that we're really facing on the marketing side is that we are introducing a brand new service to the market. This is a service that does exist in very, very like a very small fraction of like surfing communities across the country. So really getting the word out and solving this like introducing the service to the market problem is top of mind. So would love to get your perspective on two questions around that. One is, what type of skill sets would you say are key to marketers to solve this specific challenge of market education? And then second, generally, wanted to get your thoughts on tactics or strategies that you've seen early stage companies leveraging. Solve that.
Yeah, for sure. So, we kind of touched it before a little bit around COVID. So I think, there's a key thing, I think, for any marketplace, right? For any marketplace, and we're no different, is kind of like, what are the selection criteria, right? So even though we have a concierge experience on the front end, we're very, very, it's very data driven. We have a all kinds of data architecture in the background that drives those calls. It feels like a conversation, but in reality, our sales team is getting like 42 discrete questions answered so that they can submit it, kind of submit it after the call to get the match done. Airbnb, right? If I want a house with 2 swimming pools, that's not a checkbox on Airbnb, right? I can't be like, I want 2 swimming pools, right? Be very careful about that selection criteria. And so the reason I bring that up is, not all marketing skills, you asked a good question, are actually relevant. And a lot of the time our customers are coming in asking for things which we don't consider relevant, right? Again, like, it feels different. I can't ask Airbnb for 2 swimming pools, right? I can't ask Uber for a certain kind of car. And so you kind of have to like put your foot down on some of that stuff. And it's important to get that right. So for the surf stuff, local is one of them, right? So having experience with growing a business that has a local component to it, I would say that's really important. The channel stuff doesn't really matter so much. Sure, it could be online, it could be like billboards, doesn't really matter. Probably more budget dependent than anything else. But the geo dependency depends on what your geo is, right? So like right now, I don't know if you're living like, I don't know where you live, first of all, right? Which would probably be like the easier place to do your first geo. And also like, is it like, 20-person village, or are you in like a big metro, right? So like a lot of these questions kind of like kick in. So like, I think the key thing again is starting with like you and saying, okay, like what do you have available as assets? What would be your first geo for this product? Because it is a geo-based product. So I think, you probably want to start in one locale, get density of word of mouth, and then move on to another one, right? You're probably choosing a place that, well, actually, I don't know. Again, depends on your goals, right? So do you need to choose somewhere that's like a surfing hotbed? Maybe not, right? It depends on, again, like what do you need to be, what can your product do today? And what are you trying to prove, right? Goals, cadence, goals, timing, and resourcing. What are you trying to prove and by when? Right? If you're bootstrapping, I have a different answer for you than if you're trying to raise venture, for this product in 2 months, right? Because if you're trying to get product market fit and you have a lot of questions around product, you're probably better off doing something local and smaller footprint so that you can be there to experience it, right? Whereas if you're like, no, it really works, I just need to like target these like massive, Bondi Beach in Sydney, and that's our goal. Totally different, and that's a business goal first and foremost for an early stage startup, which again they often kind of like think is a marketing decision. It's not really a marketing decision unless you take the time to bring the marketer into, onboard them fully, where you're kind of treating them like a marketing co-founder. Then maybe you can expect them to make that decision for you, right? Or at least make a recommendation for you. But unless you're gonna, if you're treating them like some execution person, then you need to make that decision ahead of time. Okay, we're going after Bondi Beach in Sydney because it's where all the surfers are, and I think we're ready to pro market fit. So, and I have lockers there already, or I could, right? So go, right? Whatever it is. So I think starting there, but the local part is really, really important. And then tactics depends on the location you're choosing. So start with the locale and the goals and stuff like that, and then that will bleed into the tactics part. The tactics part is actually really easy. Or I should say easy, but like, if I hire a really good carpenter, I'm not asking my carpenter friend like, ooh, like what tools should I be looking for him to bring? Like, should he have like 4 hammers? Like, I don't like, no, like the carpenter is like fine. Like he knows how to build a table, he can build a door. Like, I don't really need to worry about that. So if you have the right talent, this kind of the tactics is irrelevant. You need to figure out how to frame the goal and the challenge and some of the other variables. Like that's the really important part. Then that marketer can pick it up and say, okay, I get it. Like this makes sense. Here's what we're going to do. And it really becomes fairly straightforward.
Super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. An early stage company, generally for marketing, you shouldn't be like umming and ahhing about channels. If you're umming and ahhing about channels and like tactics, then you probably skip some of the earlier steps that I mentioned. Because that probably means you're using the tactics and the channels to like answer again product questions or like demo questions. Because if you're just like Bondi Beach or whatever, like, all right, Bondi Beach, we have lockers on 4th Street. Like, all right. Like, seems pretty easy. Like, get a billboard on 3rd Street or something, it gets pretty straightforward. It's just executional.
Awesome. Well, this was a really interesting chat. So we're out of time here. So I want to be conscious of that, Chris. But before we wrap things up, time for a kind of quick plug. Where can we keep up with you?
Probably Twitter. I mean, Twitter at Chris Toy. I don't tweet as often as I should, but I do try and get nuggets out there a couple times a week. Probably doing a lot more of it moving forward. It's a little awkward because I have like half my audience was from my soccer days when I was running a soccer site. So half of them I'm always conscious of like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you talking about marketplace technology when I followed you for soccer? So it's a little awkward, but but it's fine. I'll be doing more of it, and especially if you want to ask questions, it's a great place to ask me questions too.
Awesome. I'll include the link to that here in the description to this. But man, this is really good chat. So yeah, thanks again for taking the time to join us here, and get ready for a lot of emails from marketplace founders here.
Yeah, it's good to it's good to talk through. I'm interested in what everyone's building for sure.
Cool. Yeah, and congrats on the recent growth too. So this is it's been quite interesting to learn more about it today, and it's been cool to see since the last time we've spoken. So
yeah, for sure.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thanks everyone for joining and the great questions.